Tell me, how historic was Hillary Clinton's run, and what will it do for the women in the long term? How will it be viewed in terms of women's political history in the
Well,
U.S.?
she's definitely a part of women's political history. She's the first woman to run for a major party, and she won the popular vote. Let's not forget, more Americans voted for her than Mr. Trump in the popular vote. It's the Electoral College that was the problem. So she definitely will. And she conducts herself with such grace. I thought her concession speech was not only graceful, but it was inspiring. And she spoke right to young women. We can't be discouraged. And I think that she has shattered her share of the glass ceilings. We will shatter this one. And I think her leadership and it was an inspiration to young women.
How long do you think it'll be before a woman runs for president and wins? And do you think it'll be a Democrat or a Republican?
I don't think you can answer that question. I didn't think it would take this long, if I want to be honest. I thought we would crack this glass ceiling before that. But I do believe we will. It's only a matter of time. And another thing is happening. We're gradually becoming a larger force in the elected leadership. We won 3 new senators. We won some new members of the House. We won in state legislatures, more women. So the numbers, it's slow progress, but it's steady. And I think that, and I know, all over the country, women are in leadership positions that we never occupied before.
Do you think anytime a woman, there have been 2 vice presidential nominees before her, anytime a woman gets a major party nomination on the presidential ticket, is that progress for women? Or did Sarah Palin set women back?
I think it's progress that people see us in leadership roles. The better and more effective that leader is, the more inspirational they are, obviously it helps even more. But there's no question we are moving towards equality. It's just too slow. And I don't know if we have the time, because basically we should be dealing with, as equals, problems such as global warming. We should be dealing as equals problems of automation. When we talk about a lack of jobs, we are going into this brave new world where machines are going to talk to machines and leave us humans out. I mean, there is real problems facing real people. We have still 1 billion people, that was not enough to eat in the universe. We have 2 billion people, or I get them mixed up, about 2 billion people who have no sanitation, another billion that go to sleep hungry. And right in this country we have about 20% to 25% of young people without adequate food. I mean, this is serious stuff. And that's what we should be working on as equals. Because women, in my opinion, are on the front lines of human services. We're on the front lines of whether or not we're going to control the number of births we're going to have so that we don't overpopulate, because that's also responsible for 40% of global warming. I mean, these are serious issues demanding not slogans, but an educated population that deals with it seriously.
Why do you think she lost the only segment of women she lost? Because she won women overall, correct?
Yes, she won women overall. She even won white women over that were college educated. She lost the people who were not college educated. And remember, education is a sub-factor, college education, for income. So we lost lower income people. And I think that part of it is fear, part of it is bias, part of it is lack of information.
Do you think she made any mistakes that if she had done something differently, like not taking Elizabeth Warren as her running mate, that she could have won?
We'll never know. I mean, let's face it, we won Virginia, which was important. And Tim Kaine was a positive asset. He will be in the Senate, just with Elizabeth Warren. I personally feel that one of the biggest blows to her was Comey coming out against her 10 days before. I mean, it was so razor thin. We're talking about just a percent here or there, right? That any little thing. But she was higher in the polls when he comes out with this, again, the emails. And there is no illegality. We all knew that. But why did the press make such a fuss over it for so long, even though there was no chance of an indictment?
Yeah. What do you think about third-party candidates? What do you think about Jill Stein in Florida? She lost Florida by, Carrie, help me, 100 and...
It was like was it 125?
125,000 votes. Gary Johnson got 260,000 votes in Florida.
Well, our problem is the Libertarian Party is also supported by the Koch brothers. And they have learned how to get the young vote. He got 9% of the youth vote. The youth vote overall went to Hillary, but 9%. And one of the reasons is his platform, for example, of legalizing marijuana. I mean, legalizing marijuana did very well at the polls, by the way. You saw what happened. We carried several states. And that's a serious issue because, in fact, we shouldn't be putting people in jail that are young over marijuana. It's terrible. And so basically, I don't know what we're going to do about third-party candidates who are nothing but spoilers. That's reality. They're taking away support from the person or people that they most want to see win. And we got to become more sophisticated in a two-party system, and that's what we got, whether we like it or not, because it's first past the post. Meaning that you don't need a majority, you just need a plurality. So the more candidates like that, they're throwaway votes right now. That's reality. Bush was elected because of 527 votes, and my friend Ralph Nader took 4%. You can't afford that now. The differences the choices are so clear. We cannot continue to throw away votes.
But you can't stop them. You can't stop
Yeah,
somebody.
but you can. I think that, frankly, we have to start taking them on. The rest of us have been very quiet about some of this, thinking we just keep our focus on the major parties. But the reality is they are a luxury we can't afford right now.
And so at least the media are talking about African American, low African American turnout. What happened with African American women? Did they turn out?
Well, there was a big gender gap. African American women voted at a higher percentage. But there's another thing that we have to remember. The Civil Rights Act, or the Voting Rights Act, was gutted so that we had a different legal atmosphere, and voter suppression was easier. They reduced the number in states like California of voting places by 200, making it less convenient, less accessible, especially for people who don't have areas where there's no mass transportation and they don't have cars. So we had unnecessarily strict voter registration. There was a gender gap, 12 points. But we have the problem now of the Electoral College, which you can win the popular vote and still lose the Electoral College. And that's what happened. So a lot of women's votes were thrown out because they lived in states like California or New York or whatever that are underrepresented by population in the Electoral College. Native American women, I didn't see any numbers on that. But I did see numbers on African American women overwhelmingly voted for Hillary. And there was a gender gap there. Latinos overwhelmingly voted for Hillary. So you can see the patterns. We are a majority movement. I'm sure and we're doing a poll, we'll have the results, an exit poll in 3 days, asking if you were a feminist, how did you vote? And I'm sure, feminists now are 60% of the female population, according to Washington Post, Feminist Majority Foundation. Men who self-identify as feminists are 33%. I'm sure we did far better with them. So there's a lot of hope also in the polls. That's why I want you to say, Mr. Trump should not get a false impression. If he's going to be the president of all the people, he's got to listen to a very large constituency, actually bigger than his own if you're in just raw numbers. You can't ignore that. And if he goes into do some of the things he's saying he's going to do, it will cause absolute turmoil. Like if he cancels immediately the repeal, the Obamacare Act, that would deny coverage to about 30 million people, okay, covering, the increase in Medicaid. If they would block grant Medicaid, it will not only throw elderly women out of nursing homes, but it would deny lower income people health care. But what else does it do? It will close hospitals who are dependent on that income and nursing homes. So these are major issues that were hardly discussed. That if he's going to change Medicare, what would that do to the elderly population? If they give you a voucher program on Medicare, I mean, come on. She won white women. I've seen that data of college educated, 51% she got. There was a gap there. She won women under the age of 45 by quite a nice margin. I don't know exactly all the details because it's I was up all night. None of us have studied everything. I intend to, though. And I feel that there's a lot of hope in those numbers that I have seen. I feel that there was a gender gap, and certainly that produced her to get the popular vote. And that's very big. You can't ignore a constituency that is numerically bigger than yourself. You could try, but it doesn't, I don't think it would bode well for our country or for the Republican Party.
What do you say to women, the non-college educated white women who did go majority Trump? What do you say to them?
Well, I think you say always the truth to everybody. You've been promised a lot of things. Make sure you get something. The reality is, he's been promising people jobs. And I know the areas very well. For example, Ohio, where, the northeast corridor of Ohio, the jobbers for the auto industry. The auto industry isn't coming back to Michigan. And it's not going to impact the area, which is my home area. I was born in Ashtabula, Ohio. I was raised in Erie, Pennsylvania. The populations have gone down because why? Those jobs are gone. I think not only outsource, but through automation. And so I think that we've got to also reach out much more to those constituencies.
Okay, thank you. Carrie?
Yeah, I have one question.
Yeah, sure.
From the historical perspective. What do you...
And look at me when you answer,
Okay,
please.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What do you think may have been lost in not having a Hillary Clinton presidency in terms of global women and children and girls?
I'm so glad you asked that. The impact of women, especially in the developing areas. We have a project in Afghanistan, which Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, we aren't in Afghanistan, but we have been defending more human services, more funding for those services, for educational services, healthcare services, and building a feminist women's rights movement there. A young woman, a parliamentarian, a member of a city council in the northern section of Afghanistan, said to me shortly, not that long ago, right during the election, I wish I could vote. She said, if Hillary loses, it will hurt our status. Men who are chauvinists there, or who are anti-women's rights, will say, see, not even in the United States can women like you win. Your place is only in the home. It will lower our stature. And that's what women all over the world are afraid of that. I say nothing's going to lower their stature because they're so brave and strong. But they deserved, in my opinion, to have a world leader like Hillary. And I think of them so much, it's as hard as it is sometimes to be a women's rights leader in a place like the United States. It's so hard where they're risking their lives. And I think every one of us should reach out to them and say, we're not deserting you. We're going to be right with you. And your stature is only going to go up.
What rights do you think American women will lose because she lost?
Well, I'm very worried about reproductive rights, that we might lose it. They say they're going to put Scalia's on the court, which would, take away Roe v. Wade. Well, we stand to lose if they stack the court the right to a legal abortion, which would be catastrophic for young women. Remember, in the old days, women died if they didn't have access, and they would again. They also say, I know, they don't think that Scalia doesn't believe women have any rights except the right to vote under the Constitution. He said that the Constitution does not ban sex discrimination. That could affect the interpretation of Title IX, which gives us equal access to education, and Title VII on employment. It's bad. I mean, this would set us back. But I tell you another thing. We would change that. The last time they reversed Title IX, I led the campaign to reinstate it. And I don't know if I'll lead it, but I'm sure someone will, and I will. I mean, if I'm alive, I'll do all I can. But all I'm saying is that they're not going to drive us back. If they think they are, they're mighty mistaken. One of the ways that they win these campaigns is through deception. And they constantly are saying, he said repeatedly, no one respects women more than I. Well, he better start acting like it. And I tell you, they tack the Violence Against Women Act, they tack education and employment access, there will be even a bigger gender gap. We're not going back. The Supreme Court, people are more judicious, and maybe they won't totally overturn. But I know one thing, these propositions aren't popular. Nor is it popular for them to defund all family planning or all birth control. Not popular. Try it. You'll just make it easier for us to win the next election.